Idaho Backroads, brought to you by Hammer Down River Excursions.
Idaho is probably not the first place you think of when you think of earthquakes, but it's actually one of the most active states in the country. As we told you, a massive earthquake shook the state back in March. Most of us remember that. And now, aftershocks continue to reshape popular recreation areas. Just Friday, a famous feature in the Sawtooth Mountains came tumbling down. In tonight's Idaho Backroads, our Steve Liebenthal shares some remarkable video caught by hikers who escaped almost certain death.
Washington resident Scott Forsyth was on his first ever backpacking trip. He was with Idaho friends experienced in hiking and climbing. The landscape photographer was using his camera to capture the grandeur of the Sawtooth Mountains surrounding Barren Lake. As the group hiked under a famous feature, one had what would turn out to be a foreboding thought.
And it was funny because we looked up at the rock, Barren Spire, or Old Smoothie as they call it. And we were all saying, man, could you imagine if that thing came down?
4 hours later, they were at their camp, relaxing with a few drinks, when the ground started to shake.
It felt like a Boeing 747 was flying overhead. I mean, to be honest, it really felt like a jet plane was flying overhead. The earth started to rumble a little bit, and I heard yelling.
It was an aftershock from a March 31st earthquake that measured 6.5 on the Richter scale. The same quake that caused a massive beach to disappear under the water of Stanley Lake. But that jet-like sound was just the first thing the hikers heard. They listened and watched as a famous rock called Barren Spire toppled from its perch.
Smoothie came down!
Many climbers, including Forsyth's boisterous friend, referred to the spire fondly as Old Smoothie. Remember, the group had been in that very spot where boulders were now pounding the landscape just 4 hours earlier.
I think I said, wow, we would have died. We were just there. We would have died.
As we were coming down, we would have been dead.
It's the kind of thing Idaho State University professor Glenn Thackeray warned Stanley residents about a decade ago after discovering an active fault now known as the Sawtooth Fault. But Thackeray says the fault that is now shaking the Sawtooths is a different one, part of a series of faults called the Trans-Challis Fault System. He says the recent series of quakes from Reno through Utah and in central Idaho are unconnected.
The earthquake down in the western side of the Salt Lake Valley that occurred roughly 2 weeks before the Stanley earthquake, we wouldn't link those two together as anything but a coincidence in time.
Dude, I felt it under my feet. I jumped up and I started recording.
Idaho is fifth in the nation for seismic activity, and Thackeray says the pattern of a major seismic event every few decades is likely to continue.
Hepkin Lake, Bora Peak, the faults, the earthquakes this year, they tend to be longer-term hazards, and the best we can do is be prepared for an event like that, and then go about our daily business.
That makes Forsyth think twice about more hiking in the Sawtooth.
Hey, probably better shouldn't climb tomorrow.
But ultimately, he says, it's worth the risk.
Oh, I'll do it again. I probably won't go to that ridge for another year. I don't know if anyone should be hiking up there right now.
Steve Liebenthal.
Smoothie is gone!
Idaho News 6.
Smoothie is gone. So, will the Stanley Fault create another rock slide like that? That ISU professor says it could happen tomorrow, could happen in 100 years, or it could happen in 1,000 years. He suggests Stanley residents take precautions like attaching tall book